Today, we're digging into the wild story behind Qualcomm's most ambitious chip ever, the Snapdragon X Elite. And trust me, it's a tale of corporate rivalry, a full-on rebellion, and a massive billion-dollar bet to try and take down the biggest names in the game.
So let's get right into it because this is the craziest part of the whole story. To really truly understand what makes the X Elite so special, we can't start at Qualcomm. Nope, we have to go to its biggest rival, Apple. Right to the heart of their campus, because that's where the DNA of this new chip actually comes from.
You see, for the X Elite to even be a possibility, Apple first had to build one of the most powerful, most dominant chip design teams on the entire planet. Their journey to creating what we now know as Apple Silicon is really chapter 1 of our story.
And just look at this timeline. It shows you just how patiently and methodically Apple built up its strength. This wasn't some overnight success story. They started way back in 2008, buying a design team called PA Semi. By 2010, they had their very first in-house chip, the A4. But the real game changer? That was in 2012 with the A6. That was the first time they used their own custom-designed CPU cores. That decision paved the way for the M1 chip in 2020, which, as we all know, just completely turned the laptop world upside down.
But how Apple pulled this off? That's the real secret sauce. See, most companies, they just license a pre-made CPU design from ARM. Apple, well, they took the harder, much more expensive route. They bought what's called an architecture license. Think of it like this. Instead of buying a pre-made cake, they bought the entire recipe book and the right to invent any cake they wanted. This gave them total freedom, and it is the single biggest reason for their massive performance lead. Remember this, because it is absolutely central to everything that's about to happen.
So, Apple has built this incredible, world-beating team. They're on top of the world. But what happens when the very people who designed that success decide, you know what, we're going to go do our own thing? Well, that's when you get a rebellion. In 2019, 3 absolute titans from Apple's chip division just up and left to start their own company, Nuvia. And just look at their resumes. Gerard Williams was the senior director overseeing pretty much all of Apple CPUs for 9 years, right from the A4 all the way through the design of the M1. Manu Gulati and John Bruno were also top architects on Apple's most famous chips. I mean, these weren't just some random employees. These were the guys, the absolute masterminds.
And their goal was, well, it was huge. They weren't trying to make another little chip for a phone or a laptop. No way. They were aiming straight for the data center. They wanted to build a server CPU, codenamed Phoenix, with a simple mission to have the best performance and the best efficiency in the entire world. They were laser-focused on single-thread performance. That's the raw, brute force speed for handling one task at a time.
And they were not quiet about it. Nuvia came out and made this absolutely jaw-dropping claim that their design would be twice as fast as anything from competitors like AMD, Intel, or even Apple's latest chip at the time, all while using the same amount of power. It was an almost unbelievable claim, and it made the entire industry snap to attention.
A tiny startup, a legendary team, and these earth-shattering performance claims, well, that's a combination that gets the attention of the giants, and that's exactly when Qualcomm stepped into the story with a very, very big checkbook.
Just 2 years after Nuvia was founded, Qualcomm swooped in and bought them. And the price? A staggering $1.4 billion. This wasn't just a simple acquisition. This was a massive, strategic bet on the people and the technology that came straight out of Apple's most secret labs.
And the reason for this billion-dollar bet was crystal clear. Qualcomm wanted to take that incredible Phoenix architecture, the server-grade CPU core designed by Apple's former top minds, and make it the heart and soul of their next-generation Snapdragon chips for laptops. And that right there, that is the moment the Snapdragon X Elite was truly born.
Of course, a move this disruptive doesn't happen without a whole lot of drama. And yep, 2 huge lawsuits popped up. First, Apple sued Nuvia's CEO, saying he was poaching employees while he was still on Apple's payroll. That case eventually got dropped. But a much bigger problem showed up. ARM, the company that licenses the underlying technology, sued Qualcomm. They claimed Nuvia's license was only for servers, and that Qualcomm couldn't just take it and use it for laptop chips. And that legal fight, it's actually still going on right now.
Okay, so that's the incredible, messy, and fascinating backstory. Now let's get to the good stuff. Let's see what all that talent, all that ambition, and all that legal drama actually created. Let's take a look inside the Snapdragon X Elite itself. On paper, this thing is an absolute beast. The CPU, which is now called Orion, has 12 of these high-performance cores. It's got a powerful GPU and a really impressive NPU, that's the neural processing unit for AI stuff. At 45 trillion operations per second, it's right at the front of the pack for these new AI PCs. It really is a true laptop-class powerhouse.
But here's what really makes it different. The CPU layout is weird. Almost all modern chips mix big, powerful cores with small, efficient cores. The X Elite? Nope. It uses 12 identical high-performance cores. And this is a direct piece of its DNA, a direct legacy from Nuvia's original Phoenix design, which was built for raw server speed, not for mixing and matching core types.
But there have been a couple of curious little things. If you look at the specs they announced last year and compare them to the final product, you'll see these small downgrades. The boost clock is a little lower. The memory speed is a tiny bit slower. Now, it's not a huge difference, but these little tweaks make you wonder, maybe they ran into some manufacturing challenges. Maybe they had to dial things back just a bit to make sure they could produce enough working chips. So, the hardware is finally here. It's got this legendary backstory and some seriously impressive specs. But for the Snapdragon X Elite, the biggest fight isn't about the silicon at all. It's about everything else around it. Because the biggest obstacle, the absolute elephant in the room, is the software. Unlike Apple, Qualcomm doesn't control the operating system. The X Elite is going to run Windows on ARM, and that platform has, frankly, a terrible track record. It's always been plagued by bad app compatibility and sluggish performance. You can have the best hardware in the world, but it can be completely crippled by software that isn't ready for it.
And on top of that, the competition never ever sleeps. The finish line just keeps moving further away. When the X Elite was first shown off, it was going up against Apple's M2 and Intel's Meteor Lake. But by the time laptops with this chip actually hit the shelves, it's going to be facing off against the brand new Apple M4, Intel's next-gen Lunar Lake, and AMD's Zen 5. The battlefield just got a whole lot tougher. Which brings us right back to our final question. The Snapdragon X Elite is a world-class chip. It was born from the minds that built Apple Silicon, and it's backed by $1 billion bet from Qualcomm. But is that going to be enough to finally make Windows on ARM a success? Or are the ghosts of all those past software failures going to haunt it and hold it back? That, right there, is the question that could define the next few years of the PC.